Chief, they're all yours.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight for this special program. My name is Andrew Caggiano, and I'm the Chief of Police for the Montville Township Police Department. I would like to thank One Montville and the Society for Prevention of Teen Suicide for their partnership in this event. This past year has been difficult for people of all ages and has led to additional challenges for all of us. As we try to navigate these challenges, people may feel lost or a sense of hopelessness and do not know where to turn or how to cope with their feelings. Mental health is so important for all of us, but this is especially important for our young people. The police department can play an important role in helping those in crisis. We are here to help those who are suffering and ensure that they get access to the help they need. We treat all people with dignity and respect, and I hope that the information that we share tonight with each of you can be used to help other people in our community. We all need to work together. Our first speaker, I would like to introduce Morris County Prosecutor Robert Carroll. Robert Carroll has been an attorney for over 4 decades and a 20-year law enforcement veteran. Prosecutor Carroll left state government and specialized in establishing state and tribal regulatory and law enforcement agencies, starting as an investigator and later as a government prosecuting attorney. Carroll was principally involved in the investigation of organized crime and corruption. As an assistant prosecutor, a deputy attorney general, and rose to supervise highly sensitive positions, including the Chief of Special Prosecution Section, Chief of Regional Organized Crime Unit, and now as Morris County's prosecutor. Please welcome Robert Carroll.
Thank you, Chief. Very nice introduction for me. As the Chief's indicated, my name is Robert Carroll. I have been involved with law enforcement for a long time. And I can say this without any hesitation. We are at a very interesting and different time than I've ever experienced in my career. Law enforcement right now is progressing. First responders and police know that mental health issues often are present when we are responding to calls and so forth. A word that's bandied about quite a bit in the media is de-escalation. And I want to address some things in regard to what does de-escalation mean in the concept of dealing with subjects that are undergoing mental challenges. We are addressing these different challenges with specialized training and new and innovative programs, which are designed to help officers recognize mental health issues, as well as initiating new programs to bring help to those who are in need. In fact, Sheriff Gannon, in a little bit, we'll be explaining some of those shows that are being put together right now and webinars that are being designed in order to essentially inform the communities that some of these services can be brought to the persons who need them, as opposed to those persons coming in. For our part, the prosecutor's office is working right now to roll out several new and exciting new initiatives in criminal justice. We're working with our police departments to train our officers with new techniques for de-escalation and in recognition of persons with mental health challenges. And there's some examples of that I'll give right now that it may be game changers as they continue to progress. One is called the Morris County Mental Health Working Group, which is a program that was originally designed by the Attorney General and is part of a program which unites mental health professionals with law enforcement professionals, as well as judicial officers and other county officials that are involved in dealing with subjects that need assistance. This program right now has a goal of developing what is known as a mental health toolkit. And what that is a unification of various tools that will be able to help those that are mentally challenged and provide that kit to law enforcement officers and first responders so that they can when they first arrive on a scene, they can be able to deal with very delicate situations, having been trained to make certain observations and perceptions and to develop new skills and alternatives in dealing with these subjects. In Morris County right now, we are dealing with all too many drug overdoses and suicides. In fact, just a couple rough statistics. In 2019, we had 25 suicides. In 2020, we had 31. In 2021, already in only 5 months, we've had 20. Last year at this time, we had 12. And that doesn't even get into the rising and escalating statistics on overdoses, which play a part in our overall view towards mental health challenges. We believe that a lot of these drug overdoses also evidence indicators of mental health conditions. A second program that we're dealing with is also the crisis intervention training. Now, what does this involve? It involves specialized training, 40 hours for police officers and first responders, which combines officers with mental health professionals. And those professionals learn together concepts and successful methods for dealing with persons that they will encounter in real life law enforcement situations. In fact, the course has teachers that are involved in many of these confrontational situations. The public awareness of these systems is also important to us because we need the help of the public. We need the advance warning of signs and indicators. So part of our role is also to be able to educate the communities as well as the persons who are interacting with persons with challenging conditions so that they can alert us, so that we can avoid having these very dangerous confrontations that occur. We don't want our youth getting involved, especially our youth at this point, getting involved with law enforcement at an early age because they have symptoms of mental health and they do not exhibit criminal intent. And what you're asking an officer to do when he's responding in seconds, make a determination. What am I facing here? Is this something that involves criminal intent, or is this person dealing with a condition that's too much for him or her to handle? And that's one of the goals of these programs. Both the CIT, the Crisis Intervention Program, and the Mental Health Working Group are going to be teaching officers, and we're going to be moving this out into the communities also for educational programs. It's a partnership. It's a partnership between the community, law enforcement, as well as mental health professionals. And we have to work together to protect those who need help. I can say that Morris County Law Enforcement is absolutely committed to this task. We ask for your support and your help. The sheriff's going to describe some very effective programs that he has been operating for some time, but which are expanding. They're expanding both in terms of the scope and also the utilization. We very much believe that if we can deal with the mental health challenges that we're dealing with, we can make a difference. Just a couple of things I'd like to add to this. The program that we're dealing with right now on the crisis intervention, this is just a sampling of some of the programs that are going to be taught. Autism, psychiatric emergency screening services, mobile response unit for children with behavioral health issues, identifying people with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, employee assistance programs for the very law enforcement officers that are responding if they need that, overview of mental health and suicide awareness, a enhanced education in that area, tactical talking and officer situational awareness. Again, a key portion of this education, which is being taught by law enforcement officers and mental health professionals that have actually experienced these situations. Understanding co-occurring disorders. Case studies involving recognizing mental health illness during a criminal investigation. So sometimes something comes in that we think is criminal, but as we dig into it deeper, we find that there's deeper issues that involve persons that are dealing with mental health. We have an overview of mental health and veterans diversion programs, which is going to be gaining more steam. And we're going to be applying programs involving active listening, and there's the word again, de-escalation skills. Now, I mention these just as examples of the type of programs and the individual curriculum that are going to be taught. What is this going to result in? It's going to result in law enforcement being better educated on the area of mental health. And we have officers that are anxious to get into this and to learn these skills. In fact, just last week, we sent 2 of our officers from the prosecutor's office, and they came back with basically telling us they were life-changing experiences, what they learned and what they feel they can translate to field operations. So I say all this is just an introduction to what we're going to be doing. In the meantime, this probably will be fully rolled out in late summer, in the fall. In the meantime, we're going to be doing some interim steps. One is called the Mental Health First Aid Kit, which is going to be an 8-hour intense course rolling out some of these concepts. And eventually, all of the law enforcement officers in the county will be exposed to these programs. We will be in the forefront. Morris County will be in the forefront of making these programs a regular, established pattern of training for our law enforcement officers. So thank you for this opportunity to at least introduce this. And I look forward to working with all of you in the future. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor. I'd next like to introduce the Morris County Sheriff, James Gannon. Sheriff Gannon is an accomplished law enforcement and security executive with over 36 years of experience interacting with local, state, federal, and international law enforcement and intelligence communities. He began his law enforcement career in 1983 with the Boonton Township Police Department, then moved to the Boonton Police Department before joining the Morris County Prosecutor's Office in 1986. He worked his way through the ranks and retired from the Prosecutor's Office in 2007 as the Deputy Chief of Investigations. He joined the private sector and held various executive level positions with the Novartis Corporation and was sworn in as the Morris County Sheriff in January 2017. I've had both the honor and privilege of working with Sheriff Gannon for many years while he was with the Prosecutor's Office and now as the Sheriff. So please welcome Sheriff James Gannon.
Thank you very much, Chief. It's certainly great to be here tonight, and I'd like to give special thanks to Chief Caggiano, the Marlboro Police Department, and Prosecutor Bob Carroll, who I happen to know for over 3 decades as a very sophisticated prosecutor. But if I could forecast, I would say that Bob Carroll will be known as a prosecutor who's done the most for mental health and addiction. You can see that's his passion. And he's working at warp speed to do that here in Morris County and beyond. I'd like to thank One Montville, Sherry Schwartz, thank you, the president, Gul Khan, my friend, different faiths, one family. Gul is part of my family. We know each other very well, and he's a great man. And lastly, and most importantly, the Society for the Prevention of Teen Suicide. All the experts on this panel. Very honored to be a part of it, just to do introductions. But I want to take 5 minutes and look at a few things inclusive of the current state of affairs, just to set the mindset, right? That we have to understand what's going on, right, in the world. And, you know, obviously we have a global pandemic, but we also had economic downturn last year. The market went to 17,000, right? So we know that. In Morris County, we're the 10th wealthiest county in the United States. We have 354 documented homeless. So homelessness is an issue, a real issue. We've had civil unrest throughout America. In Morris County alone, 42 demonstrations, okay, all peaceful. You have issues of global terrorism. We could talk about Israel. We could talk about Palestine. We have issues of isolation and issues of hopelessness. So I think it's important to recognize that. So people that are in the best circumstance, undergoing all that can be problematic. But I want to talk about some programs that we're using that are helpful. And if you could take one takeaway out of this few minutes is that hope is within reach here in Morris County. Hope One, you may have heard of from April 2017, is a mobile access recovery vehicle that brings services to clients. Pretty simple program. You know, the prosecutor spoke about, you know, obviously suicides, but fatal drug overdoses. You know, last year we had 99 and we have 41 as of this morning, right? That's a real issue. Suicide's a real issue. So we decided to develop a program called Hope One, and it's simple, right? Bring services to the client who are at risk. And we have a sheriff's officer, right? The mother of Hope One, I say, Corporal Erica Valvano. Can't say enough about her. And we have a clinician for the Mental Health Association of Essex and Morris. And we also have a certified peer recovery specialist that can speak the language of addiction to people. So since April of 2017, we've made 604 stops, about 2,672 hours. We've been out in the community. We go to locations where the homeless are known to be. We go to locations where people are known to use, where people are known to have died. We go to locations where the community wants us. So far, we've had 19,090 contacts. That means one every 8.4 minutes, we have a new contact with someone that says, I have a family member, a friend, or a colleague, or myself that needs to have some information from you. We've done 3,600 Narcan trainings. We've tracked back 61 of those kits have been used to save a life or attempt to save a life. We've placed 430 people into programs, 225 into recovery and rehab and 205 into mental health services. We've issued 694 identification cards. I just left Table of Hope, where I was serving people down there dinner. And a gentleman was telling me about Hope One and an ID he got. That was about an hour ago. If you don't have an identification, you can't get services. You can't rent a library book if you want to talk about literacy. You can't navigate, right? So we do that. And Hope One was very proud to have received the 2019 International Association of Chiefs of Police Public-Private Partnership Award, first place. It's a program that's simple, a program that works. So we have services out for people. You may have heard about the Hope Hub. On March 5th of this year, we launched the Hope Hub. It's a multidisciplinary panel made of law enforcement, social services, mental health services, healthcare providers, treatment providers, and recovery specialists. We identify people at acutely elevated risk. In other words, something bad's going to happen to this person, maybe towards suicide, maybe towards fatal drug overdose. And we, if they'll sign up and be HIPAA compliant, we'll wrap services around. As of today, we have 34 service providers that can assist people, all different types of services: recovery support, substance use disorder services, mental health services, LGBTQ services, unemployment services. We could take care of all types of things with these partnerships. This is the best in public and private partnership, if you ask me. We meet 9 a.m. on Fridays, go over casework and things like that. It's really, really important. And I think it's all about the stigma-free campaign, right? I mean, I think that it's all about stigma-free. We say that we take people where they are geographically and clinically. And I think that's extremely important. These programs work if you give them the opportunity to work. I think we have some heavy sledding coming forward with regards to issues that my office will be involved in, such as foreclosures, evictions. I'm the president of the State Sheriff's Association. I've been directly involved in those types of issues and making recommendations to the state on how we can interface the Hope Hub with these foreclosures and evictions as an example. We have a Narcan 2.0 program. So when a person gets Narcan right in the community, then specialists will go to the hospital and try to introduce them to maybe a program. The list goes on and on. You may have heard of the Hope Wing. I run the Morris County Correctional Facility. We know the majority of folks in there are there for their addiction. I have a wing dedicated to people that want to get sober. We introduce them to all kinds of curriculum, AA, NA, inmate-led, led from the outside. But we also do curriculum, anger management, repair familial relationships, those types of things, because if I can deal with them in there, we have a better possibility when they get out. When they're getting out, we have the Morris County Successful Transition and Reentry Program known as STAR. And we'll work on folks' housing, employment, education programs. We'll send a community service officer out if they miss their Vivitrol appointment, and the list goes on and on. You may have heard of Navigating Hope. Navigating Hope is another county program where we sign people on in the community: Medicaid, food stamps, TANF, aging services, veteran services, domestic violence services, medical needs, transportation assistance, and the list goes on and on. You heard Prosecutor Carroll speak about the Morris County Mental Health Working Group, which we're joined in on. I think that's extremely important. I think it's forward thinking. I'm also on the New Jersey State Mental Health Advisory Committee with the courts. So the list goes on and on, but we're also out in the community on anti-hate events, reassurance patrols at our houses of worship, and all those types of things. I'll just close with this. I'm not highly trained or qualified, as other people are. I'll speak with decades of experience in law enforcement. I believe that 2021, 2022 are truly the years of mental health. They truly are. And let 2021 and beyond be the years of a focus on healthy bodies and healthy minds. We are here to help. From a law enforcement community, we're here to help. You got Chief Caggiano, you got the prosecutor, you got myself, you got every police chief in this county standing with you on these issues. The police are warriors and guardians. 90% of the time we're guardians. taking care of people who need the services. So you know how to reach me 24/7. None of us are big sleepers. Okay. You can call us and we will help you. Your family is our family. Okay. So I look forward to the presentation. I will be attached for questions and answers. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sheriff. And we have one more speaker before we get to our presentation, and it's Mr. Gul Khan. Mr. Khan is a resident of Montville and founder and coordinator of Different Faiths, One Family Interfaith Platform. Mr. Khan works with local pastors, rabbis, imams, and other faith leaders to organize events to bring communities together, promote religious and racial harmony. He has organized rallies against terror attacks, such as the Pittsburgh synagogue attack and the New Zealand massacres, the Sri Lanka church bombing, and other social justice issues. Mr. Khan has also been a key speaker on multiple 9/11 memorial events, both here in Montville and in the Bhutan area. Please welcome Mr. Khan.
In the name of merciful and kind God, God loves all humanity and all of his creations. God loves when we are happy. God loves when we are healthy. God loves those who help others to preserve life. So it's really nice to see. And I want to thank Chief Caggiano and Sherry Schwartz from Montville and Michael behind the scene organizing this event. I want to thank Prosecutor Carol and, of course, my friend Sheriff Gannon. It's really nice to be a part of this company, to be speaking about it. As Sheriff said, we're not expert, but we care about our family. We care about each other. People of faith, they care about each other. They care about family. They care about community. Friends, we believe children are expressed as a purity in nature and perhaps highest aspiration of holiness and goodness. Scriptures say, and they're across different religions, that God has special mercy in parents and adults who love children, and we do all love children. As I said, children are a divine gift, and it's trust from Creator upon parents and those who are responsible to take care of them. We must attend their physical, intellectual, and spiritual need. But most importantly, we must also come together to keep them away from any harm. Remember, God loves life over death. Studies show that majority of youth, they don't call themselves religious. But when you talk to them, they believe in existence of something greater than self. What we believe is their inner spirituality. Now, religions have played a major role in the history to bringing communities together and provide help and support. Religions have highlighted elements of life and death to influence the followers. Studies have shown that families trust faith leaders for spiritual guidance, especially in the time of stress and sorrow. So I ask parents and children, in addition to all resources available to you, what Prosecutor Carol and Sheriff mentioned, and you're going to hear in the presentation, please consider reaching out to your faith leaders. They are there to help you. They are there to comfort you and guide you. May God protect us all, and may God especially protect our children and bless them with health and happiness. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. I appreciate your kind words tonight. And now for our presenter for this evening is Susan Talone. She is a certified school nurse and health educator with a master's degree in nursing and a bachelor's degree in mental health and rehabilitation. She has been working as a psychiatric nurse for the past 38 years with an emphasis on suicide prevention. In 2008, Susan took a position at the Manasquan High School as a school nurse and educator, and soon after that, her school experienced one of the larger teen suicide contagions on record. During her tenure at Manasquan, as a response to the suicide contagion, Susan took the roles of crisis coordinator, anti-bullying specialist, and master lifeline suicide prevention trainer. Susan continues to present both locally and nationally on this topic. Susan and her crisis team focus on rebuilding of Manasquan School District with a renewed emphasis on strength, resiliency of students, faculty, and community. Since retiring from education, Susan worked for 3 years as a vice president of the Mental Health Association of Monmouth County. Presently, she holds the position of the clinical director at the Society for Prevention of Teen Suicide, where she continues her passion for preventing suicide among youth through education in schools and communities. Please help me welcome presenter Susan. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Well, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me in your community. I have to say, you know, we do travel the state, and we actually travel the country speaking about suicide. And, you know, to get to a community where you have such key stakeholders with law enforcement, prosecutors, police chiefs, religious leaders, you know, it is truly a blessing to have all of you come together with the same message that mental health is a priority in your community and that you're working together. So thank you for having me, and thank you so much for you know, welcoming us into your community. Tonight I'll be working with Wendy Sefcik and Kyle Kalbach, and you know, as Wendy and Kyle will be working with me, we really want to make tonight informative. We want you to be able to answer questions at the end. So we'll have a Q&A at the end. And if there's any questions that you want to put into chat during the presentation, feel free to do that. And I just want to say that, you know, if there's anyone, and I know there's so many that have been affected personally, you know, by any kind of traumatic event in your community, you know, if you need to take a breath or need to take a break during this presentation, feel free to do that. Okay. Kyle, you want to share the screen and we'll get started?
Yes. Michael, screen sharing is disabled. Can you enable it for me real quick?
Okay. Wendy, I don't know if you wanted to say a few words about yourself before we got started, or say hello and introduce yourself a little bit.
Well, I wasn't planning on it, but I will. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. I'm sure everyone is anxious to get to the program. I'm a 25-year resident of Montville, raised my family here. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because we lost a child to suicide 10 years ago. And I know that it's so important to take care of our children's mental health, and that there's much that we can do to enhance resiliency in our children. So we're hoping that you leave this program with a sense of hope and empowerment on how we can all raise more resilient children. Thank you.
And my other colleague is Kyle Kalbach, and he'll be working the technical. He's our program manager and my right-hand man. So thank you so much, both of you, for being with me. All right, Kyle, if you can just move on the screen. You know, so if we just take a moment, and so much has already been talked about why our children could be going through such tough times during this pandemic. And we as parents have been going through such tough times throughout this pandemic. And the one thing I want to say is that every single person on this call, every single person in this country, every single person in this world is experiencing chronic levels of stress, all of us, and uncertainty and anticipatory stress, because we're still not sure of the future. Are schools opening? Are they not? You know, all kinds of things. So that level of stress for a long period of time really presents challenges for us as parents and for our children as well. And we have brains that are developed and the children do not. So a lot of what goes on with our children is really, really challenging during this pandemic. We wonder about social media. How is this impacting? We worried about it before the pandemic. Now it's been their lifeline. How is that impacting them? The complications of early puberty. We see so many kids entering puberty at a younger age. Safety concerns, not just the pandemic, but the world events, the countries, unrest, racial unrest. And certainly we've been worried about the uncertainty of COVID. So there is so many challenges that we're entering that we need to sort of give ourselves a pat on the shoulder for even showing up tonight and getting through this past year. Okay. So when I talk to you about, adolescent brain development, we have to understand that the adolescent brain is not developed fully until age 22. Or they say 22, I say from my observations, I've been doing this a long time, 24 for boys, they're a little bit behind sometimes. So, we've got a brain that is not fully developed. So impulse control is not fully there. Their emotions are up and down. They're not easily regulated. We have all kinds of things, hormones going on with our children, early puberty. So their decision making is not developed. Impulse control is not developed. And so oftentimes you'll see that adolescent with that one foot in that adult world and you think, oh, he or she gets it. And then the next day you have a little child in front of you and you're not quite sure. So those ups and downs of emotions are part of that adolescent brain development. Okay. So today, we're talking about resilience, right? And what does resilience mean? When you think about resilience, and really resilience is the ability to recover quickly from a difficult situation, to bounce back from adversity. And what could be more difficult or have more adversity than a year-long pandemic where children have lost family members, teachers, families have lost jobs, there's been food insecurity, and in some cases, substance abuse being dropped with, abuse in the family, domestic abuse. So there's so many things that our children are having to bounce back from, not to mention anxiety and depression that has set in throughout this year. So the ability to bounce back from adversity is what I want to talk to you about tonight. How do you help your child? And we start very, very young, and we're going to talk about that, building in those coping strategies so that when they get to adolescence, they have some skills, that they can pull from. Okay. So, when we think about what is a resilient mindset, no need to think outside the box, simply realize there is no box. It can be, the ability we've got to develop this resilient mindset. And it's not in a box, it's bigger than that. Okay, Kyle. So we think about our children and, how do we build resiliency? And you think about this like scene here, your little boy or girl falls down, scrapes their knee. There's a couple things we do as parents, we oftentimes, we might swoop in, try to tell them it'll all be all right, that, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt, just a minute. And I'll take care of everything. And I'm going to make you feel better. And you sort of take, all that responsibility on because we want to help. We don't want to see our children in pain. We don't want to see them struggle. We don't want to see them suffer on any levels. When in fact, you really can't take away that pain, can you? I mean, it really hurts. You're going to have to clean it. That's going to even hurt more. So you're going to have to help your child do these three things: reflect, adapt, and make the best of it. So you're going to say to him, wow, you fell and you scraped your knee. It looks like a pretty good scrape. Okay, we can do this. I can't make the pain go away, but I can be with you while we get it cleaned and we get a Band-Aid on it, and you're going to have to just be brave to get through this tough time. I'm with you, but you can do this. And we're going to do it quickly, and we're going to get you cleaned up. And look what a brave boy or girl you were. You did that. I stood next to you, but you did that. Not I did everything, but helping them build the skills and then helping them reflect on look at what you did and how you were able to manage that. And I'm really proud of you. So if you can do that, you can do other things. So you're always building on these skills, not rushing in to fix everything, but showing them that they have the skills to do it on their own. Okay. So the research on resiliency has shown that the great surprise is that it doesn't come from rare and special qualities, but it comes from ordinary, normal kinds of resources in the minds, the brains, and the bodies of children, in their families and relationships, and in their communities. So it's not that a magical thing, it's an ordinary thing. And so every single day, we have the opportunity to teach our children to bounce back from adversity. Every single day, they're going to be, challenged on some level. And to be able to say to your children at the end of tonight, I just want to tell you how impressed I am that you've made all the decisions you've made this past year. This has been hard on you. No generation has ever done what you've had to do at age 14, 15, 13, 12. I'm really proud of you. Look at what you've done, and to point out their strengths. Okay. So the theory believes that the ups and downs of life are to be embraced, not avoided, and that coping with risk and bouncing back from adversity is actually good for us. So as parents, we can take a breath and say, I don't have to fix everything. I don't have to make a perfect world for my children. I can just stand there and support them as adversity hits. Because the truth of the matter is that it's going to hit. And when I'm not here on this earth, I want them to have the skills to manage adversity, because I'm not always going to be here to take care of everything. Okay. So understanding the challenge mindset is that, we all love and protect our children, but it's actually insufficient alone to guarantee a child's successful transition into adolescence and eventually adulthood. So I've heard so many, mental health issues are not a result of bad parenting. There's so many things that can go into a mental health issue, trauma, drugs and alcohol, genetics, all kinds of things that go into mental health conditions. And so we need to recognize that sometimes all the love and protection isn't enough. Sometimes we have to open up the conversation, and we're going to talk more about that as the night goes on. So, as I said earlier, you want to foster that mindset. And so you think about if I was to ask you, what do you want for your children? Many people, I've asked this throughout, will say, I just want them to be happy and healthy. But take another thought on that. Is happy and healthy enough? Or do you want them to be independent and strong? Independent of you, right? Independent and feeling self-esteem that comes from within. Intrinsic, not necessarily extrinsic, but intrinsic, that they feel good about themselves. And that they're not relying on you to tell them how wonderful they are, but that they actually think they're pretty good themselves. So you're fostering the mindset of a resilient parent. Is like, I want that for my child. I want them to be independent. I want them to be able to solve their own problems. And I want them to be able to look at the world and find resources. What's in their world that they could pull from? And, whether it's other trusted adults in their environment, and just the ability to look around and say, what do I need here? And how can I get it? Okay. The mindset of a resilient child. We want our children to feel special and appreciated. And we do that by, praise and showing them their strengths. We want them to cope with everyday challenges. So if a challenge comes up, you share that conversation with them. What do you think? How do you think you can get through this problem? that they can solve the problems and make some decisions on their own. Even little kids, you know, can you think about the scraped knee. And I was a school nurse for a long time, and I would say to a child, do you want soap and water? Do you want this different medicine? I'd give them choices because they both cleaned the wound, but I would bring them into the decision making, which they would have some autonomy. That they view their mistakes and hardships and obstacles as challenges rather than stresses. And I hear kids say this all the time. I've heard it throughout my career. I'm stressed out. I'm so stressed. I'm so stressed. I'm so nervous. And I would say to them, are you stressed or are you challenged? Are you nervous or are you excited? Because what we say to ourselves matters. So try to think about the words that you're using and put them more into a positive spin, because there's a difference between being nervous and excited, and there's a difference between being stressed out and challenged, and your body feels that. That they're aware of their strengths and they're aware of their weaknesses, but that they use their strengths to enhance their weaknesses. Okay, so if someone has, just say, lots of friends and the gift of gab, but they have a fear of public speaking, you can say, look at you, on the baseball field, you can talk and talk and talk, and your friends are always gathering. You have the gift of gab. Now you just need to transfer that strength to public speaking. If you have the school presentation, you remember what you have that is strong and move it over to a spot that needs improvement. It's not weak, just needs some improvement. And and kids that are resilient, they focus on what they can control. And lots of times, they have little things that they can control, even when they're very, very small. So, focusing on what is in your control. And that they have good interpersonal skills. You want your children to be able to talk when you're not there. You want them to be able to advocate on their behalf, and that and to be able to have skills where they can interact with each other. Okay. So I will tell you that, when I was working in the Manasquan School District, and, we're a town that, there's some people work, some people are home, really doesn't matter. It's not, you wouldn't say it's one way or the other. But every single morning when I worked at that school, I would watch between 7:30 and 8, the amount of lunches that were being dropped off, the amount of sports equipment that was being dropped off, the amount of books and notebooks that was being dropped off by kids who had forgotten them at home. And you started seeing the same parents dropping off the same stuff almost weekly. And so when this is a sign that we did not make this sign up, but we actually saw this on the school, so we took a picture. If you're dropping off your son's forgotten lunch, this was an all-boys school, books, homework, equipment, etc., please turn around and exit the building. Your son will learn to problem solve in your absence. So what would happen if, you might drop off the sports equipment 1 or 2 times, and you might say to your child, you know what, I have to be at work at 8:30, so I can't do this every day. You've got to be responsible for taking your books to school or your sports equipment or whatever, your lunch. And if you get there and I can't bring it to you, you probably should have a plan as to what you're going to do. Would you borrow? If you forgot your lunch, would you borrow money? Would you share lunch? Would you ask the teacher? What would you do? Same thing with sports equipment. Could you go to the coach and let him know you don't have what you need today? Could you borrow some? Is there any extra equipment around? Or would you have to sit on the bench? But whatever those consequences are, those natural consequences, oftentimes are our greatest teachers to our children. Natural consequences help them develop, I don't want to forget my lunch. I don't want to forget my sports equipment. That was a bad day. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to start thinking differently. Otherwise, they will rely on you to do their thinking for them. Okay. So when you're thinking about, what protects my child? What are protective factors? What things can I build in that might buffer my child against being at risk for any kind of issues, mental health issues, even bullying? What would give them some skills to buffer them? So you think about protective factors, and these are characteristics that contribute to resiliency, and they serve as a buffer, okay, against risk. And so what are some of those? If you think about what is a protective factor, and it can be a good support system, connection to your church, connection to your community, giving back. We have found that children who give back to the communities, whether on any level, whether it be Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, like I said, church, these are protective factors. They actually feel good when they contribute. And a good support system and some what we call trusted adults in their lives, people that are around them and not necessarily you, because oftentimes children don't go to their parents with all their issues, mainly because they know you love them so much that you will be sad if they shared everything with you, that if they have emotional stress, they may not want to make you sad, so they may not tell you. But to have that aunt, that uncle, grandparent, we know that one of the single most protective factors in a child's life is one consistent, caring adult. Now, we'd like them to have more than one. We'd like them to have 3 or more. But as long as they have one consistent, caring adult, that can oftentimes buffer them. Okay. So when you're, fostering these protective factors, what you really want to do is, and this is such an important first piece, the first line here, to teach your children that it is okay to ask for help, that their mental health is as important to you as their physical health, and that it is the same, right? The brain is an organ, just like the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, and it's on the same body. There's not a line that separates it. It is your physical health. Your mental health is your physical health. And that you will respond to a mental health issue just like you would a physical health issue. And I say this all the time, if your child had, diabetes, you would immediately get them to a physician that specialized, an endocrinologist that specialized that. And you would make sure that they had the insulin just right, because you would want that pancreas to work correctly. It's the same thing with our mental health. And we have to start thinking about it that way. So tell me, if you're not feeling good, let me know. Identifying trusted adults, as I said, help your child say, who in your life is your trusted adult and why are you choosing that person to be so? Participation in school and community activities, and always acknowledge your children's effort, not necessarily the result, but the work that went into it. And not necessarily, how do you define success? Is it winning the game, or is it good sportsmanship? What is it? Is it the A, or was it the work that went into studying? So always finding something to acknowledge their efforts. Being a good listener. Oh my goodness, this is so important. As often as you can. And when kids tell us what they look for in their trusted adults, they look for someone who will listen without judgment. They look for someone who will do something if they really need help. And they look for someone who will follow up, come back to them and say, you know what, yesterday you told me something and I walked you down to the nurse's office, or and you told me that and I've been thinking about it and I'm wondering how you're doing today. So that follow-up piece shows a child they care and they're not just brushed off. Kids are used
Susan, if
Yeah.
I could just interject on that,
Yeah,
because this
please.
topic of trusted adult is so important. And I think it's really important to remember for the parents out there that very often with teens, although parents, we want to be that trusted adult. Very often for teens, it will be somebody else. So it is important that you allow your children to have another trusted adult that maybe isn't you, and to understand it's just a natural part of growing up, that they may grow away from you. So if they have that special teacher or that coach, you want to encourage and foster those relationships and not make your child feel guilty if it's not you that they're always going to, although that would be the ideal situation.
And to understand, Wendy, that it's an actual developmental task of adolescents to separate from their parents. They must separate on some levels, or they won't be able to launch, to college or to outside of the home down the road. So these little trials of separation that they might confide in another adult, they're testing the waters. That's part of that developmental task that must be met to launch into adulthood. So to actually see it as a positive, that I can't be the only one, because when they get to college, they may have to talk to their RA. They may have to, go to a counselor on campus. They may have to do something without me. And that's a positive. So good point. And jump in at any point, Wendy. I always love, don't hesitate. Okay. So, dispelling myths around suicide. And I want to just take a few moments to talk about this. Dispelling this, will talking about suicide plant the idea in someone's mind? This question is asked to me all the time. And the answer is unequivocally no. If a child is thinking about suicide and someone talks to them about it, and I have done this for 40 years, and I have never once seen a child not have a sense of relief when I have asked the question if they are suicidal. They finally, somebody understands what I'm feeling, what I'm going through. Because we will say oftentimes, oh, you have so much to live for, and we'll dance around. You're not suicidal, are you? That's how people ask the question. And that just puts the child, oh, no, I'm not. But in fact, to just say, are you thinking about this? Are you thinking that life is getting too hard to live? Tell me about that. And I always say those 3 words, tell me more, and we'll talk more about that a little bit further on. Okay. Is suicide just a way to get attention? No. I mean, and I would say this, and I've had so many parents say, I think it's just a way of getting attention. Well, it may be, but if someone's talking about taking their life or not wanting to live any longer just for attention, who's going to give them attention? Because they absolutely need it. So, if they are doing it for attention, then somebody start brainstorming about how to give that child some attention, because something is going on for that child, and we need to give them a lot of attention. Okay. Isn't suicide just a normal part of adolescent drama? No, it is not. Adolescent drama is up and down. There's some definite drama. I'm not going to, sugarcoat that. I was in a high school for 10 years and I raised 2 adolescents, so I know the drama. But is talking about suicide always part of that drama? No, it is not. And don't most suicides happen without warning? Some do, and some don't. But the truth of the matter is that oftentimes as time goes on, we have some, looking back, some people will say, I thought that there was no, but now looking back, there were some signs. I just didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't know. So, we can't really say that most happen without warning. We can't say that. Oftentimes there are warning signs. Okay. And don't suicidal people need to be in psychiatric hospitals? If it's imminent and they can't be safe, yes, we need to hospitalize them and keep them safe. But the truth of the matter is there's a spectrum, okay? There's a spectrum of thinking that goes on in suicidal ideation. And if someone is, when I'm a nurse, right? So I think in terms of medicine, stage 1, 2, 3, 4, think about cancer. If someone is at stage 4 and in their suicidal ideation and they can't be safe, then yes. But oftentimes our kids are at stage 1 and 2 and 3, and they may be having thoughts, but there's not a plan, or they may be feeling this way, but they haven't advanced to stage 4. So no, they don't need to be in psychiatric hospitals. They do need support, and they do need counseling, and they do need help, but not necessarily always hospitalization. If we intervene early enough, we can keep so many kids out of that emergency room, where oftentimes it's not a great setting, and they can actually have more trauma and a bad experience. And we don't want that. We don't want our kids to end up with a bad experience when they finally do ask for help. We want them to get some help early on. Okay. So what can you realistically, do? And the truth of the matter is, this is such a hard topic to talk about to our children, because the thought of it as a parent is just so hard to imagine. So we have to ask ourselves, where am I coming from, and what has my experience been, and why is it so hard to talk about? So, almost have to look at your own experience, and what am I bringing to this? If you've had it in your family, if you've had the ideation yourself, if you've lost someone, and it's so painful. So all of these things, come into our reactions. So let's take a few moments and think about, why is this so hard? And let me get solid with my own thinking here. And you say to yourself, what do I know about suicide? What do I know? What do I think? What would better help me understand? And something like this tonight, that you're all here, is excellent, that you're trying to learn a little bit more so that you can have this conversation from an educated point of view. So all these things, is to really think about, what do I know? And we know that suicide is often comes from a problem that child feels is unsolvable. So I'll talk to you about that right now. And I just want you to take a moment and just think about this. Suicide is not a desire to end their biological existence, okay? It's not a desire to necessarily die. Suicide is an attempt to solve a problem of intense emotional pain with impaired problem-solving skills. So there is pain, mental pain. Sometimes that mental pain results in physical pain. But there is such intense emotional pain, and they truly believe that they have tried to solve it to the best of their ability, and they can't get to the solution. It is still with them. And so they start to view it as an alternative, as a way out of the pain. Not that they really want to die, they just want the pain to end. Does that make sense? Wendy, do you want to add to that? You're on mute, I think. Wendy, you're on mute.
This is what threads us back to what we were talking about earlier, is that helping kids to develop problem-solving skills, with us not always jumping in and intervening, because life is going to get hard, right? We know that none of us get through this life unscathed. Difficult things come up, and we want to make sure that when the difficult times come up for our kids, that they understand that they have it within them to figure out the problem when they can't come to us, or they can't come to somebody else, and that suicide is never an option. So we want to make sure that those problem-solving skills are honed and developed to a very, very high level. And it is something that we don't often think about, because as parents, we want to fix. And we, as Susan mentioned earlier, we don't want our kids to hurt and to have pain, but that is part of life. So we want them to know it's within them to problem solve. And yes, we do want to make sure that we have these hard conversations about things like mental health and taking care of your mental health, and even the topic of suicide, which is a difficult and almost scary topic. But the more that you talk about it and are comfortable with it and understand it, it takes the fear level down, and it allows your children to know, I can talk to mom and dad about anything, because they're not going to freak out if we have that conversation about suicide. I went to this program tonight, and it was, there was some discussion about suicide. Have you ever thought of suicide? And your child surprises you and says, actually I have, mom. And what is the natural reaction? Oh my God, Don't even say that. You know how much I love you. Don't talk like that. And then your child will shut down. So we want to make sure that when we have these conversations, that we do it in a way that we open that dialogue and we allow them to talk about the hard things with us and not solve it, but let them know that they have it within them. And the whole tell me more. You have thought about it, tell me more.
And tell me more are three little words that have such power, because kids are used to parents saying, oh my goodness, do you know how much I love you? You can't leave me, that we would never be the same, all those things that we feel. But to actually lean in to that conversation and say, you know, to hear you say that you're struggling so much that you may not want to live any longer. Pause, breathe, and say, tell me more about that I need to hear about. And just, that's it. You know, you just say that and they will tell you more. And the other way that I have done and seen this work is when I know that a child, in my experience, that I sense that a child is feeling this way, I have oftentimes hit it from another angle where I've said, do you have any friends? Do you know any friends of yours that are thinking about hurting themselves? Now, adolescents will naturally talk much more easily about their friends. It's something, yes, I do. Are you worried about them? Yes, I am. And then I can transition to, how about you? Have you had the same thoughts as your friends? Can you understand their thoughts? And then oftentimes, when I have accepted that their friend has the thought, and now I can accept that you have the thought too. When they see my reaction, if they say their friends have had this, I say, that's hard for them. I wonder what I can do for them. And tell me about that. And they tell me a little bit about their friends. And then I shift it towards, have you ever had those thoughts? Are you feeling similar? Can you relate to that friend? Yes, I can. So that's just a little thing that I've done in my career, but you can do it your own style. You do it in your own way. But what Wendy said is, don't, just breathe and say, tell me more. Okay. So what does an intense emotional pain feel like? All right. Worthlessness is a big piece of the puzzle. Hopelessness. And I was so touched by all the law enforcement that was talking about hope, because I think that's such a key piece, that hopelessness. We need to instill hope. We've got to hold on to hope. But they feel hopeless, helpless, like being a loser, confused, empty, and desperate. So that when you put in hopelessness and desperation, oftentimes that can feel so intense, and that pain can really overwhelm them, and they can make a bad decision. Okay. And what problems could seem unsolvable? Getting into trouble at home, in school, or with the law. And that's why when law enforcement is being trained and educated like that, it's so important. Schools are being educated on how to talk to kids when they do get in trouble. And now we're educating parents on how to talk to their children when they do get in trouble. Kids get in trouble. That's part of their job too. That's part of that developmental task. They're going to break the rules. That's part of being an adolescent. Being humiliated in front of friends, especially for boys. I saw this in the suicide contagion that I dealt with in Manasquan. We lost 11 out of 12 boys. And 11 out of 12 of the ones we lost were boys. A loss of a relationship, an opportunity, and a dream. And COVID, boy, has this put this in the forefront. And I think that's why we've seen an increase in anxiety and depression, because these kids have lost relationships. Some kids haven't even been able to see their boyfriend and girlfriends, 15, 16-year-olds. It's devastating. They're in love and they can't see them. Opportunities, their sports, their junior, senior years, they're showcasing to get into college. They've lost that. That means they've lost their dreams. And even though we say, oh, you're only 14, 15, to them, it's really, really critical. And those relationships, they feel love. They have the endorphins that go off in the brain that, truly feel love. And they truly believe that they will never feel this way again. And I always say this, but research has shown that first love experience, that first sexual experience, they may not feel that way again. And that's why I always say, be careful about letting your spouse go to those high school reunions, because there's feelings from those first loves. And if you look at some of the research after divorce, many people do go back to those high school relationships. So it's an interesting thing. Any transition for what a youth feels unprepared for. Again, COVID. How could, when we think about this, transitions can be, moving schools, divorce, moving houses. But COVID has been the transition that they felt so unprepared for. That's a big piece of the puzzle. And they're after not being in school for a year, when they go back full time come the fall, I anticipate there's going to be a lot of anxiety about that. And there are things that that may bring up for them. So all these transitions, we're in full time, out full time, hybrid, we're back in, or someone has COVID, we're back out. It's been a real roller coaster for these kids. So transitions have made them feel very unprepared. Okay. So when we think about risk factors and warning signs, I'd like to sort of help you think about this a little bit further. Simply because you have all the protective factors in the world doesn't mean you're immune to suicidal ideation. You could have all the risk factors in the world as well. Doesn't mean that you're going to feel suicidal. But if you have the warning signs, that means you're there. That's something is going on and we have to stop and really pay attention. So when I look at this traffic light, the protective factors are all those things that we talked about earlier, the things giving back to the community, the church, trusted adults, all those things. So when you have coming up to a traffic light in the green, you've got the green light, things are good. You're feeling relaxed, things are good in your life. You're going to go through that green light, you're not going to worry. But then you're coming up to that light and it's turning yellow. And you say, oh, am I gonna go through it? Am I gonna brake? Am I gonna put my foot on the gas? Is there people around me? I'm starting to feel anxious. Those are the risk factors. There's some things in my life that aren't easy right now. Doesn't mean that I'm, suicidal, but there's a lot going on. And then the light turns red. I have got to stop, or something serious could happen. And that's how you look at the warning signs. They're the red. That's something. And, I think, again, I'm a nurse. So I think about, a heart attack. There are people that, eat well, exercise all the time and still have a heart attack. Who's that big trainer that had the heart attack? And now he's on TV saying, I had the heart attack, the Biggest Loser, the guy that was on Biggest Loser, right? And then there are people who are obese, never exercise, smoke cigarettes, and never have a heart attack. And they have all the risk factors. So protective factors don't necessarily protect you. Same thing with suicide. Risk factors don't necessarily mean you're going to have a heart attack. But anybody who's experiencing chest pain, shortness of breath, sweating, that's a warning sign. Get yourself to a hospital. So it's the same kind of thinking. Okay. So, we put warning signs into an acronym called FACTS. Feelings, actions, changes, threats or talk, and situations. And feelings are what I described earlier, the sadness, the overwhelmed, the desperation, feeling like a loser, feeling worthless, hopelessness, helplessness. Those are the feelings that a kid can, have. Actions are things that they're doing. And oftentimes they may be isolating. They may be more aggressive. They may have highs and lows, ups and downs. They may be having behavioral changes from their normal. And I always say nobody knows their kids like their parents. So, what am I looking at? Is this my kid? What's changing? What's happening? And that's when you look at changes. Look at the baseline of who they are, and if they're a talkative kid, and are they quiet? If they were a child that loved to come and join you at the dinner table, and now they're not hungry. Appetite changes are a big thing. A lot of people think that kids will lose their appetite if they're depressed. Oftentimes kids overeat during depression. They calm and soothe with food. So you may see weight gain. Sleep patterns, changes in their sleep patterns. This is really, really big. Our children don't shut down. And there is a lot of research going into the blue light and sleep patterns. And even if they have the phone next to them and the blue light is flashing, it actually stimulates the brain, and they may have trouble getting into a deep sleep. Our children are not sleeping enough. And when they don't sleep well, their coping strategies decrease. So if you have, and we all have, the ability to take that phone away at night, to just put it in the family room or wherever and out of the bedrooms, I suggest that in terms of just really trying to get them to sleep. And changes can be, in their friends group. If you're starting to see a kid all of a sudden, and I have nothing against tattoos, and I'm sure Kyle's probably smiling right now because he knows I'm not a fan. But if all of a sudden there's just changes in their choices, that can be an indicator. Threats and talk, and certainly if a child is saying, I don't want to live anymore, I don't want to be here anymore, you have to listen. But or I want to die, or no one would care if I was here anymore. You have to listen. But oftentimes they don't say things that clearly. They say things like, and I've heard this over and over again, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. This is too much. No one would notice if I wasn't here. My family would be better off without me. I'm creating a lot of stress for them. That kind of stuff. So you almost have to listen, like really tune into, what did I just hear you say? And what are you thinking about? And how are you feeling? And pause. And these are warning signs. You must ask this question at this point. And situations, like I say, those breakups are really significant. Loss of opportunity, dreams, changing grades, starting to go down, getting into trouble with the law or at school, at home. These are situations. Divorce, transition, what's going on that could be contributing to this child's feeling overwhelmed. Okay. Warning signs you could see and the one thing I can say about warning signs, and I get this question a lot, how do you know what's normal adolescent angst from when you should be worried? So I say 2-week period. If your child, or 10 days even, if your child is all of a sudden changing, or this is really going on, but it's lasting for 2 weeks straight, 10 days straight, every child is going to go up and down in their emotions, but is it hanging in there? Is this a pattern now? They're not, this is staying with them for 2 weeks. Something's going on, and I need to pay attention. I need to start asking questions. Okay.
And I also think we all have to trust our gut, and we're not, anything I say, I hope you understand. I look at it from hindsight, because I look back and what did I miss? What mistakes did I make? I know I was a good parent. I know I loved my child, and this still happened. So it's hindsight. So I say also trust your gut, be aware of changes. You don't have to memorize warning signs, risk factors, but be very, very cognizant of changes in your child and trust your gut. That's what makes you a good parent. And then act on it. Don't try to talk yourself out of it. This is just typical teen behavior. Act on it, have conversations, open the lines of communication with your child.
And again, going back to that physical health, if your child had a simple stomach ache for 2 weeks straight, you'd say, I got to get him into a gastroenterologist and find out what's wrong. I mean, it's only a simple stomach ache, but it's been 2 weeks, right? So think about your mental health in the same way as you think about your physical health. Someone had a headache for 2 weeks straight. I can see having a headache for 2 days and even a migraine for 3 days, but 2 weeks. So, start thinking about it in those ways. So warning signs you may see at home and the expressions of emotional distress. Again, those outbursts, the highs and lows, getting into trouble, the changes in mood, but again, that regular changes in appetite, withdrawing from activities. And the last one I can't emphasize enough. If your child says to you that they're worried about a friend, please listen. Kids know when their friends are in trouble. They know. They hear them. They see them on Saturday nights. They know when and I hate to say, if they've been drinking and they say a few things, they heard it. They can't unhear it. They heard it. And kids, listen to your children if they're worried about their friends, and try to get someone to know about it. Call the school, call the parents, something. And if a friend ever comes to you and says that they're worried about your child, stop what you're doing and really listen, because kids won't do that unless they know information. And we really have to let them have the if we have to give them the opportunity to be able to talk to us about it. If we say, oh no, you're not right, kids won't talk to us. We have to be open and accepting and say, tell me more about that. I mean, that's hard for me to hear, but I need to hear it. Tell me more. Okay. Warning signs that the school might report. Again, the changes in appearance. It's hard to tell now because before COVID, I would say, you know, girls would come to school and they would dress up. Boys would always look nice. Then all of a sudden they're coming in their sweats and their hair, and they're not showering. That's a change in appearance. What's going on? Now I feel like we're all in sweat, but you know, so it's hard to see, but you know your changes in appearance, changes in mood. For example, no longer cheerful or suddenly cheerful. Some kids, when they've made a decision, can actually start to get happy about it because they know the pain is going to end in their minds. Changes in eating habits. And again, I said loss of appetite or increased appetite. And looking at isolation, and now it's hard to see with COVID because kids are isolated in so many ways. We used to look at school bus, cafeteria, but you know, if a child is withdrawing from their friends and family or activities that they love, something is going on. And the bullying behavior, if your child is a victim of a bullying behavior, that is so painful. You know, you think about the developmental task of adolescence, and it's really peer-to-peer. So if their peers are being harsh on them, that's heartbreaking for them. And the cyberbullying is really hard because, you know, kids can say, one kid can say a really mean thing, and then that can get 1,000 likes. And that just can be, you know, an avalanche for an adolescent. So that, you know, really start to talk to your children about, you know, safety on social media. And if it starts to feel unsafe or harmful, you know, they got to tell you about it. And even the bystanders, I would say that as the anti-bullying specialist, I talked to more kids who felt guilty about not being an upstander, not standing up for someone who was being bullied. And God forbid something happened to that child, those kids had a really hard time. So, you know, even the bystanders can be struggling. Okay. So what do you need to know about risk factors? Risk factors are situations that increase the possibility that someone could be suicidal. Most people have risk factors, are never suicidal. And the truth of the matter is there's always more than one risk factor for suicide. People always want to say what happened. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's an onion. It's layers and layers and layers of things. And it can be what I call the perfect storm. Just things came together all at once and it became unbearable. So, all right. There is a risk in what we call exposure to a suicide attempt or a completed suicide, you know, and that can elevate the danger in teens, even if they didn't know the deceased. So there is an element of risk in exposure. That's why the conversation has to really be, you know, in the forefront. How are you feeling? If you start to not to feel well, you need to let me know. And, you know, it's really hard to lose anyone, even if you didn't know them. It's just hard. It's just hard. And to open up that conversation is really important. Recognize possible warning signs. Talk to your child as what you can do. You know, these warning signs are there. Talking to your child is there. You've got to begin to really ask those questions. More than anything, you've got to listen to the responses without judgment, even if you don't agree. Validate that they have the right to feel that way. You know, you say, you know, I don't necessarily understand why. If you really disagree, why, you know, you can say, I might not agree with you, but I hear that you feel that way. And I can understand that that's something how you feel. And that's important to me, how you feel. And I want to listen a little bit more to that. and know where to go for help. Know where and how to get help. And I think that's really, really important. We have resources, local resources, or National Suicide Resource Prevention Lifeline. And, you know, there are many, many resources that we can, the Society for the Prevention of Teen Suicide has an enormous amount of resources on their webpage. I'm sure Kyle will put our link in the chat. And there are hope lines. The second floor youth helpline is very, very important. You know, if someone dies by suicide, then, you know, we need to make sure that the people around them know their resources, know what's available to them. There are text support lines. Kids like to text. And so all of these things, and I always say to, you know, once you get these resources in front of you, to practice with your child. Here's a text hotline, a text hotline. Let's see what happens when we text it. Does anybody answer? Once you do it once with a child, they have it really increases their tendency to do it on their own. So I think that's really important. If you're worried and you have concerns, and like Wendy said, your gut is saying something to you, listen to your gut and try and get that child help. And there is an enormous amount of help out there. You know, we have the Children's System of Care. You don't ever let finances get in your way. There is Perform Care and they can actually assess your child, come to your home, come to the school. These are resources up here that I was talking about earlier. So many resources that, you know, help is out there. And like I said, don't ever let money get in your way, because the Mental Health Association has, you know, free resources. There's just so much up, and particularly in Morris County. I think it's I know Monmouth County is very fortunate to be rich in resources. And I believe, Wendy, Morris County is pretty fortunate as well. So, you know, these are things that you really need to reach out. Okay. So bringing it all together, recognize your role in helping your children learn to help themselves. And really your role is that conversation and opening up the dialogue. If your child does need your help, remember the first step is to listen, not immediately fix the problem, and validate. You know, you have a right to those feelings. I understand that you feel that way, even if you don't agree. I understand that you feel that way. You have a right to your feelings. That alone can take so much pressure off of the child. And if you're worried about your child, to reach out for help, because that is and it's about you know, you would never ask your child permission to, like I said, get them to an endocrinologist if you suspected diabetes. But I hear a lot of parents saying, well, they won't go for counseling. It's about keeping your children safe. It's about taking care of their health. And so even if you go together, you figure out a way to get them there if you really feel that something's going on. Don't put it off. And that's the presentation. I think we've got time for some questions and answers, and I welcome any dialogue. Does anyone have any questions? And you can either unmute or put it in chat.
I just want to emphasize that all of this is the topic of mental health, and for everyone to remember that we all have mental health, and sometimes we're all going to struggle at some point in our lives. So we all can play a huge role in decreasing the stigma and bringing down that stigma so that our children will understand it's okay to struggle, it's okay to ask for help. And again, back to that resiliency, this is all going to play into resiliency, but it is really, really important that we do more to reduce the stigma associated with mental health. And I'll tell you, just seeing the other community leaders here and hearing what they're doing, everyone is recognizing that it's important. It takes a village, right? It's not just what we're doing in our own homes. We all need to wrap around our kids in our community. And that's by creating these culturally competent communities around the topic of mental health, we will save lives and really we'll just make the lives of our kids that much better.
And, it was said earlier in the presentation, and I could not agree more. I have been doing this work for 41 years. Okay. I've been in the field for 41 years. And I agree with, I'm trying to remember who said it, but that mental health in 2021, 22 is going to be the focus, because for the first time, the pandemic, the silver lining of that pandemic is it has decreased stigma and shame attached with asking for help. You see it on the television. People are talking about it. People understand. We all now know, because we have experienced it. There isn't one person here, not one, that hasn't struggled this year with their mental health. Not me, not Wendy, not the prosecutor, not the sheriff, all of us, because that's the natural thing that happens when things change, as they have through the pandemic. So everybody manages it differently, and you can't have shame anymore. It's time to break down that barrier and have the conversations that are going to move us forward. They're going to move us forward. We're going to have healthier children. It is the second leading cause of death amongst our youth. That's just unacceptable. And so by having these conversations, and the pandemic has brought it up, so let's seize the moment. The country is ready to hear the conversation, and we can start it over our dinner tables. Okay.
Thanks for that, Susan. And there it looks like there's a question in the Q&A.
Okay.
If there's anybody that would like to ask a question verbally, please use the raise hand button on the Zoom panel if you're attending via Zoom, and I'll unmute your line.
Is there a question?
The question I'm just reading through. So what was brought up is there can never be enough safe places which promote a sense of safety in our children, which is absolutely true. How I could have used this beyond drills to dive under desks during an air raid drill. Very, very interesting. There were also predators in our neighborhoods, and few parents believed us. So I'm not sure what the question there is, but you're absolutely correct that there are never enough safe places. And we want our community to be that place that children know that there are many connections with many trusted adults, who we have that right here as we can see. So it is important to continue to promote that. And in our schools, they are doing things also to promote the safety of our children, which may be very, very different. But there's many ways that we can promote the safety for our children.
And I think that's such a great way of looking at this, is keeping our children safe. I mean, we have said for years, we put our helmets on our kids when they go for bike rides. We teach our kids about fire drills in schools once a month. Why aren't we talking about this? I mean, how often does a fire happen in school? But we're practicing all the time. We can practice talking about our mental health issues when we're losing kids at the rate we are. So, when I look at this panel, and I have to tell you, I'm impressed. I mean, the fact that you have who you have on this call tonight tells me something that is unique. You have a police chief, you have a prosecutor, you have religious leaders, you have one Montville, you have all these people coming together to say, we're going to take care of our children, and we're going to take care of each other. It's not just children, by the way, because we're losing lots of adults at the same time. So, we're going to take care of each other by increasing awareness and conversation and decreasing shame attached to these conversations will move the needle so far. I know it. I am so grateful that I've lived long enough to have this moment in my career, because I've been worried about this for 40 years. And here it is. We're ready. We're going to break the glass ceiling simply by talking about it. Okay.
I don't see any questions here, but I also do just want to let everyone know that everybody that's here, we continue to be a resource for you. So if questions come to you after, or it's something that you didn't want to discuss in a public forum and you wanted to have a conversation, please know that you can reach out to any of us and we'd be happy to have that conversation. A lot of the work that I do is community outreach and have conversations with parents who have children that struggle or survivors of loss. So I can put my, I was going to put my contact in the Q&A, but I'm not sure if that's visible to everyone, but we'll make sure that everybody's contact information is available to you if you were here.
And I want to just say that I will also offer, my email. I make myself available to everyone I speak to by email. You can call my office. I will speak to you. I speak to everyone that calls me no matter what. And if you call me during the day, I will get back to you by that night. So have no problem calling me. And I wanted to take a moment to thank One Montville, Chief Cagiano, Sheriff Gannon, Prosecutor Carroll, and Gul Khan. I have never met any of you in person. I really hope, and Shari, you as well, I really hope I get to meet you in person because I am impressed. And I am very grateful to have been invited tonight. So thank you.
Well, thank you for coming. And we will have all contact information on the onemontville.org website. So if people have further questions and want to get in touch with you, we will provide that on our website and they can reach out.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Have
That
a good night,
concludes our
everybody.
presentation. Have a wonderful